Friends, welcome back to the Marriage Ministry Mayhem series with me and co-host Andi Andrew, everybody in the candid.
Hello.
It has been so fun. Last week's conversation about ministry. Have you not got a chance to go back and listen to those two, the marriage and the ministry ones? We'll see how today's works out. I'm hoping it'll be just as good, but man, that ministry one ministered to me. And I think if you really go back and listen, it could really free you to just be present in what you have. And I know a lot of people are like, just be present in what you have. I think what that episode had to offer was, it's not just be present, but here's what happens when you're not. And Andi and I were very vulnerable, and we talked very honestly about how human we are and how gross it can be, and also how gracious God is in those moments. So today we transition and going, our life, this is the reason why we came up with this title, is because this is pretty much the essence of Andi and my life. Marriage, ministry, and mayhem. This kind of encompasses, and when we say marriage, it's kind of like marriage and family, you know, like our children, like we talked a lot about that in the first one. So marriage, ministry, mayhem is really like, if I were to sum up my life, I would be like, this is my life. Marriage, ministry, mayhem. Like, it's chaos. It's crazy. There's a lot of moving parts. And I want to talk about this mayhem thing because I do juggle a lot of things. I thank God a few years ago bit the bullet and got an assistant. And man, I felt so embarrassed getting an assistant at first. I was like, who do you think you are? Like, you need an assistant. You're not that big of a deal. What is the problem? Why can't you do it all? Blah, blah, blah. And I had a friend who, I know, I got problems, girl. Like, I'm telling you, this
I was like,
narrative.
thank God I have an assistant. And
I know. Oh, I'm like that now. But it took me a few minutes. And I remember sitting with a friend, and she was like, I love you. You need help. Like, you aren't stewarding what God has given you well, because you're missing things. And I talked about this in an earlier podcast about what happened when I needed to bring something to my kids for like their thing, like their, party or whatever at school. Well, this happened most recently, and I do have an assistant, and this just speaks to the mayhem. And my assistant, sweet Karrie, she produces the show, DJ KB. She's amazing. And she plans everything out because I have so much. So it's like, hey, your kids need this, or, you've got to be at this, or pick Rome up at this time, or whatever. She helps me with so much of that stuff and ministry stuff. And I was responsible to sign up for, this happened last year, and I totally botched it. Go back and listen to the episodes with me and Tori Hine. So this year I was ready to kill it. I'm going to sign up for the football thing that I need to bring food to this football thing. You got to sign up for this thing, right? Like, they're having like a football dinner for the football players. Both my boys play football. And so Karrie was like, okay, what do you want to sign up for? I'm like, what's the easiest thing I can sign up for? And she's like, well, most of the stuff is taken. You can do watermelon. I was like, great. I can cut watermelon. We can do that. And so she put it on my calendar. She put an alert the morning of that I had to bring it on my calendar, because she's so gracious to me. And I'm sitting on the chair. 2 watermelons are on my counter. I am doing whatever. I don't even know what I'm doing. And my daughter looks at me and she goes, aren't these watermelons supposed to be at the football thing today? I go, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, what time is it? It's 4:00. It's supposed to be there by 4:30. It's about 10 minutes away, but they're not cut. They're giant watermelons. So I'm getting out the knife. Totally hard. I'm getting out the watermelons. I'm cutting the watermelons like crazy. Watermelon seeds, watermelon juice. It's going everywhere. They're crazy sizes. I got big wedges and very thin wedges, because I'm just cutting through these giant watermelons. And I go to turn with the water, like to get something, and there's watermelon juice all over the ground. I have this giant knife in my hand. I slip like the cartoons on a banana peel, fall to the ground, bruise my wrist and my hip, and the knife in my right hand comes towards my chest, like I'm going to impale myself. Luckily, I didn't. I'm still alive. And I'm just sitting there on the floor, and I'm like, you got to get it together. You got to get it together. So I'm like, okay, shake it off. Can I walk? Can I get up? I got up. I'm like, okay, this definitely going to leave a mark. And then I realized I hadn't gone to the Dollar Tree to go get those little like containers to hold all these watermelons. So I get all the watermelon in these containers that I have that I can't bring because they're my pots and pans and whatever. I shove them in the pots and pans. I drive to the
That's
Dollar Tree and I go, it's crazy. I go and I get the pots and pans, or I get those little dollar things, and I don't realize I should have doubled them up because they're so flimsy and I have so much watermelon.
no,
So I'm putting
no
them all in these things and they're not holding. If you're watching
twisting.
this on YouTube, you're getting a better visual because the way these little pans are, they begin to just like, it's too much. It's too much watermelon in these things, but I don't have time. So I'm in the parking lot. It's 98 degrees, putting all this watermelon in these like containers. I'm dripping sweat. I get in the car. I drive to the place. I get out and I have to scoop these things up. And now they're just like, it's just like made a ball. Like it's like holding around it. It can barely hold the watermelon. I'm going in, I'm bringing in like pounds of watermelon into this place. I do make it on time. I get it
You
there, but
made
I
it?
was like, I get into the car and my anxiety was like, I realized like my body, I was like, sometimes when I'm too anxious, I need to eat something that's really bad for me. I know it's bad. It's like soothing mechanisms. Like I'm like, I need a bacon Gouda,
It's
or
very
I need like
honest.
something like, I need something to like soothe me right now. And I'm just sitting in the car and I'm like, what happened? What
Oh,
happened? You know, Cara Beth is not to blame here. Like she did all that she was supposed to do. Now
Beth did her part.
she did her part. I brought cookies yesterday, but knowing her, she actually let me know an hour before the cookies were supposed to be delivered. You still have cookies that you need to do. And
And you
I was
went and
on
bought
there.
some Oreos.
Yeah. Oh, I went and bought the packs from God, from Walmart. And I was like, life is mayhem sometimes. Like
Yeah.
literally, I am just like, I am helping people heal in their story. I am training people to dive into being trauma informed, biblically sound, spirit filled. I am pouring scripture out in their lives. And I can't get freaking watermelon to my kids' football team without almost impaling myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yep.
perfect. This is not relatable for you.
No,
Is it?
this is so relatable. I have so many stories I don't even know where to start. I am like the mom I'm the mom who's constantly apologizing, and when we lived in Brooklyn, all the other moms were always, like, looking at me like, "Yeah, you missed, like, the parent-teacher
I,
day. You
oh my
missed the
gosh.
curriculum day. Oh, you didn't know there was a party? Why didn't you sign up?" They kinda look at me like,
Totally.
oh, you work? You have a
Yeah.
job? Your poor kids."
Oh,
I'm like, "I do both. I'm home sometimes, and then I have a job." Like, you feel like you have to explain everything.
totally.
One of the most like traumatic stories for me, which I obviously needed some healing after this story. I was like, whoa, that revealed a whole lot in me that I didn't even know existed. Was Zeke was like, I think in third grade. So my eldest was in third grade. I had signed up to be a chaperone on a field trip. And it was a field trip where you had to jump on the subway and ride all the way up to Harlem. We lived in Brooklyn. Their elementary schools in Brooklyn. So I was going to be a chaperone on the subway and for the field trip. So I'd signed up for it. I have like baby Sam. Sam's like, maybe a toddler, but I am working from home. My husband and I have pioneered and planted a church. We are co-leading this thing. I am one of
Right.
the teachers. I'm helping lead teams. I am raising my kids at home. So I was like, you know what? I can do this. I've always wanted to be the field trip mom because I'm fun. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
That's what I
thinking,
do. I sign up for field trips. I do nothing
yeah,
else, but I'll be the field trip mom.
I'll be a field trip mom. I,
Yeah.
I have a good time on the field trip. So
Yeah.
sign up for the field trip. And I am, just in the middle of doing something. And I get a phone call from the teacher. They're in Harlem. Harlem's a far away from Brooklyn on the train. And
Yeah.
I start sobbing. I'm like, like can't breathe. I'm like, so sorry. Cause she's like, yeah, Zeke was like wondering where you were. My brain goes, oh, he's going to have trauma from this, that I abandoned him on the
What
field
happened
trip.
though? Did you get on the subway and were you supposed to go on the subway with them? Or
I
what? Did
forgot.
you just miss the
I just,
times?
I just forgot.
Oh,
I just forgot.
you're just hanging out.
I'm just kind of like I forgot the start time of us recording this podcast and showed up and you texted me and said, "Hey, are
You
we
coming
good
on?
to go?" And I was like,
Yeah,
"Yeah."
see you at noon.
where's my hat at noon that we're gonna, and you're like, no, it was 11. And I'm like, I've told my whole family to leave me alone from noon. And, but it's stuff like that where it's like,
Right,
I actually am like, I can get stuff done as well.
right,
Like I know I'm juggling all the things. I know, and I need margin, but there are so many moments that I've had where I have botched it and then felt like I'm ruining my child because I just missed
right.
their field trip. Or, you know what I mean? Stupid stuff. Or
Totally.
all the moms are glaring at me because, or in my mind they are, they're probably not,
Probably
but
not,
they're
right.
like judging me in my
Mhm.
mind that
There's
I'm like,
probably a couple of them that are,
well,
because there's
yeah,
always a
they're like,
couple that are
well,
like,
yeah. And they
"Oh."
passive aggressively say things like,
Yeah,
wow, you're never here. And I'm like, oh,
right.
you're not. Well,
Or
you're
yeah, I
always
know.
here
"Oh,
and your
wow,
kid wants you
you
to
were
leave.
able to show up today." I had a lady go, "Oh, it's so great to see you. You were able to show up today." I'm like,
Do,
in my head, I'm like saying a
wow.
bad word about her.
Do we need to break this down? Do we need to have a
Right,
conversation?
right. I know. And
So
it's so
plenty.
crazy. How can we hold all of these things and yet so many things fall through our fingers? And I think
Yeah.
that's the truth of like this idea around mayhem in my life. And there has been for me in handling mayhem, truly what we're speaking to is really chaos. Like,
Yeah.
what do we do in the chaos and how do we hold the chaos? How did Jesus hold chaos? And, how did he manage it? Because clearly he had literally the weight of the world on his shoulders, like
Mm,
literally, and did it with such grace. And he was unhurried and
hmm
he got everything that he was supposed to get done. And so I want to speak to a little
hmm
bit about what gets us into chaos and what are some of the things that we can do to begin to go, okay, let my yeses be yes, my no's be no's, and what can we look at in our own life? So for you, when you're starting to hold a lot of chaos and things are starting to get a little crazy and out of whack, what are some of the things? What are some of the indicators that that's happening? Like, how do you know when you're like, I'm off kilter? Like, short of missing your kids like thing or me
Yeah,
getting the watermelon, it's much bigger than that for
it
me
is.
anyway.
Yeah.
What are some of those indicators for you that you're like, I am in chaos right now, and I actually need to notice the mayhem and look at it? What are
Yeah.
some of those indicators for you?
I mean, we just had a recent season of chaos and a lot of the indicators came up for me. So for context, I've mentioned it a couple of times, but we did
Hmm.
just launch our first child. He has
Hmm.
moved to New York City.
Huge.
He's doing a gap year so that he can become a New York resident again and then get lower tuition. He's a
Yeah.
genius.
Smart.
Next year, which I mean, he grew up in New York, so he knows how to live in the city. And
Hmm.
so we launched him, but that was deeply emotional because um, I knew he would leave it eventually, but I thought we maybe had another year. He was going to do a gap year with us in Charleston, but he made the choice to go back and there was so many areas of that where God called him. He had his own word, and we were like, "Whoa, you've got to go."
Right.
Like to hold him would have been horrible,
Hmm.
and controlling. So we
Right.
released him, but so in the middle of all of that, I'm traveling. I'm in Australia. We brought my son with us. It was my husband, Paul, and I. It was a ministry trip, but brought him along. So we're doing that. I'm getting phone calls from my other son who's like, hey, I think I want to homeschool. And we broke that down. And I was like, okay, um, we can do that. You have to talk to your sister because she'd be going to high school alone and give her the choice. Talk to her. She wanted to homeschool. I'm like, okay, I can do this.
Wow.
And then my youngest, who I felt like I just knew that discernment as a mom where you're like, he's not supposed to go to this middle school. I can't explain it. So
Right.
started to look around, found this amazing spirit-filled Christian school that he's going to. I mean, it's like kind of create a left brain, right brain. He's like,
Mm.
it's the perfect school for my Sammy.
Mhm.
So we start the year, and in 1 week's time, we're traveling. We get back from this beautiful trip from Australia. We've got to pack up my son. We need to go and fly him to New York City. We've got to register my kids for homeschool. I've got to do all of these technical things that I've never done before. I've got to get my other kid starting in his new school and what started to happen for me is my emotional tank. I'm very good at being emotionally present. I actually had like a full-blown panic attack in front of my kids when I got these emails from the homeschool stuff, and I'm freaking out in front of them going, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. And I was so embarrassed. Like I had to go into my room. I'm sobbing. My husband comes up. He's sitting with me
He's like,
going,
hey,
hey girl, what's
what's
up?
up? You okay?
We need to talk. But after we did, it's like he brought me back down. But then we kind of had to have a family meeting like, hey, I want to be emotionally present for my son who's about to leave. I
Right.
want to be able to do this homeschool thing for you kids and alongside you, but I've never done this before.
Right.
So there's that. And so we had to have like a family powwow, but I literally lost it. I called two friends, thank God, that homeschool, and they talked me off the ledge and said, you're doing the wrong homeschool, do this one. And it took me 30 minutes to sign my kids up. And I was
Thank
like,
God.
but do you know what? All I'm saying is the indicators are I start to panic about things. I emotionally overreact. Like I have like, I'm a pretty visceral emotional person naturally, but I know how to
Right.
keep it in check, like, and
hmm
use and be emotionally appropriate. Is that even a
Right.
thing?
Right. Yeah.
But
No. Right.
but when it starts to get wild and I can't control myself and I'm forgetting things and I feel guilt and shame and all of those things come up, I know that I need to pull it back together. So that is
hmm
so what I did was we like cuz you asked it like what do I do?
hmm
Well, first of all, we powwow as a family. I sit everybody down and go, this is what's happening for me. None of this is for you guys to fix or carry. I'm figuring stuff out. Number
Right.
two, I simplify where I can simplify. Where do
Yes.
I feel like I am carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders? I need to do everything when that's a lie and I don't. And I
Right.
can say no to some things and call some friends and go, hey, this is the season I'm in. I can't come to that thing. I'm so sorry. Thank you for inviting me. Or whatever that is. I
Mm.
simplify and then I ask myself, what really matters in this season and where do I need to be present? Because again, anxiety, I talked about this in the last episode, is when we're way out there somewhere else, we don't even know how to be present. So it gives us anxiety because we can't accomplish all the things. So I have to constantly reel it back in. That was a
Uh,
lot of talking.
no. No. It's so good, and it makes my brain spin. You and I clearly are very much alike, and just to give you guys context of, uh, in a more psychological terms of what Andy's
Yeah.
talking about is we operate in our window of tolerance. This is what we can tolerate, where we are able to manage chaos because life is
hmm
chaotic. It's just chaotic.
Yeah.
But when we get out of our window of tolerance, it is when the chaos is then controlling us. So
hmm
we feel out of control. And for Andy and I, we go into, and you guys have heard, if you haven't, but there's previous things I talk a lot about this, but we operate out of our window of tolerance into what's called hyper arousal. So
hmm
we get crazy, chaotic anxiety. We get a short fuse. We're like, oh my God. And we get panicky, like our body gets panicky. And then people around us start to have to feel and bear the weight of our panicky because we're not able to regulate. And
Yeah.
if someone tries to speak to us in that state, we can't really hear until we can kind of come back. That's what
Yes.
she's meaning about that powwow. That powwow is actually bringing the family back into the window of tolerance, going, okay, this is what's going on. For many of you out there, you go, well, that's not what I do. What I do is the opposite. I'm out of my window of tolerance when I go into what's called hypoarousal. My husband does this often. He gets very internal, he gets very quiet. He starts doing a lot of tasks. He gets very tasky. And
Yep.
like, sometimes it benefits me because he gets the dishes done and he starts
Oh,
doing like little things like around the house. And I'm
praise.
like, I know you're in out of your window of tolerance, but it's actually benefiting our
I am so
house.
blessed by it.
I know. But the problem is that he's not able then to have meaningful conversations. The stress and the chaos is actually ruling him and moving him out of and away from intimacy and
Yeah.
closeness. And it happens on both sides. So when you're naming that, I think it's important for us to understand the reason why we're talking about mayhem is because mayhem and chaos is absolutely a part of life, but it
Yeah.
does not have to be the thing that controls you. You
Yeah.
actually can find places of going, this is how I manage chaos. And this is how I know when the chaos is managing me.
Mhm.
And these are some of the indicators. For me, a great indicator is often for me, I'll go to one of two things. I'll go to apathy, which is I don't care about anything. I don't care about anything. Everything can just go to hell and I don't really care. I don't care about ministry. I don't care about anything. I guess my kids are just, I don't know. They're just never going to love Jesus and never going to do anything great in life. Like I get
Yeah.
really cynical and really apathetic. So then I'm like,
Wow.
oh, that's where I'm stressed out. More often than not, I start getting very competitive and envious, like in my hyper arousal, like, oh, if I could
Mm.
just be doing that, or we need to be doing that, and I'm not actually dealing with what's in front of me. I'm actually
Mhm.
looking to other things. And that's when I'm like, oh, the chaos is managing me. I love what
Yeah.
you said when you said, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit more. What can I let go of? What can I streamline in my life currently? Because clearly there's too much. There's too
Yeah.
much. And so I'd love to break that down for people
Mhm.
because again, chaos is inevitable. It's inevitable, but we can within our tolerant ability, we can manage chaos without it managing
Yeah.
us if we're aware of some of the steps on how we get back into that window of tolerance. You named, okay, first of all, you went to your room. So there was an ability, just step one, regroup, like gather yourself
Give
and
yourself
be
a
on,
timeout.
give
Yeah.
yourself a timeout and let's get honest. I'm not, I'm not doing well. Like if we can't even start there, will the chaos
Yeah.
will manage us. And that actually for a lot of people listening, that might be the very thing that you're like, that's going to be hard for me to do because busyness keeps me away from the things that are painful. And so we can talk about that on another podcast.
Yeah.
But if you could start even with,
Mhm.
you got honest.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not okay. And it was in that honesty. Your husband tried to engage you a little bit, bless his heart. But you know more than not, Jesus needed to kind of get like, hey, sis, look at me. You're not
Mhm.
doing okay.
Mhm.
And then there was this powwow that you have. So I love those two steps, kind of like gathering the wagons, like,
Yeah.
hey, let's talk about this. But here's what I heard you say that I would love for you to expound on. Then I had to look at my schedule and go, what can I
Mhm.
streamline and what can I get rid of?
Yeah.
Why do you think this is so hard for people? And in addition to that, how do you know what to streamline?
Yeah. I think the older I've got, the better I am at saying no. And
Yes.
that was hard for me for years. So
Yes.
I would say meta, like big picture, you have to know what your values are as a
Ooh,
person, as a
that's good.
family, as a married couple. Because if you don't know what you value, so I know for me, a high value is family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
that's one of the things I'm like, okay, so does my calendar actually value that right now? Or
Wow.
do I value everything else? And it's in those moments. What's so funny is in that chaotic moment, I still was valuing my family, but everything that I had to do on a task list was
Mhm.
stressing me out.
Right.
So I had to take a breath. There's going to
Mhm.
be moments where even while you're operating in your sweet spot of values and your calendar is right, that you get overwhelmed because it's just
Totally.
hard to do, or the way that your brain works, like,
Mhm.
and just and what's the window called? I love when you bring the
Window of
psychological part.
tolerance. Yeah. Window of
Yeah,
tolerance.
when you're out of your window of tolerance, whatever that looks like for you,
Right.
that's just going to be a natural thing that happens.
Totally.
But so I think for me, for I would say to everyone, know what you value, what your values are, like what your rhythms are, what you value big picture.
That's
And
good.
then my husband and I have to have like a monthly calendar meeting with our assistant
Mhm.
because both of our worlds, he now works for Pastor Greg for Pastors Collective. He also has his own like ministry that he's pioneered called the Barnabas Network that goes under the umbrella of Pastors Collective. And what that is to, really pastor leaders and
Yeah.
pastors so that they can live well, finish strong, be seen, cared for along the journey. But that means he's on a lot of retreats. That means that he's caring for a lot of other people. That means that he's gone. And then we know like September, October, and the spring, heavy travel season for me. Even if it's only a couple of days,
Right.
sometimes I have like a big trip in the middle of that. Like I'm going to Europe, I'm going to Dublin.
Mhm.
So We are literally having a calendar meeting, picking it apart, going, we value our family. So therefore, how is one of us on the ground? And if we're both away, can we bring my mom and dad in so that they can have family with them? Can we make sure? Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? So it's
So good.
literally has to outwork itself practically.
Mm-hmm.
Value system, calendaring, what you say yes to and what you say no to. In ministry, I know in the previous podcast we talked about ministry, but like I used to think that I had to say yes to every
To
speaking
everything.
invitation that came in.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like I was being somehow like this weird thought of like everyone matters, every church matters, every person matters. So it was like this weird like savior complex that was so ungodly.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go, forgive me, God. Like, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? And
Mm-hmm.
also, like, so this Australia trip, guess what? Like, I mean, these are my good friends that I've been there twice before. This is the third time I'd be going back, but it fell on my son's 18th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to my son, I was like, I will not go on this trip, but we also could make it an 18th birthday trip if you want to come along. So,
Mm.
but if you don't want to go, like, and honestly, this is my kid who would be like, yeah, that doesn't sound fun. Like, most people would be like, Australia, let's go. But
Yeah, that's
he's
so
kind of
my
my very
oldest too.
practical, like,
That's
yeah, I
so
don't know
mine
if I,
too.
right? You're like,
Yeah.
what?
Why would you not want to go travel around Europe? He's like, I don't know. I don't want to leave my friends. I like my routine.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
Are
I
you
mean,
my
at first,
kid?
he was really weighing it up. Like, wasn't sure
Mm-hmm.
if he really wanted to go. So I was going to say no to this engagement because to be away for his 18th birthday was not something I was willing to do. So those are just
Right.
like super practical, but
Mm-hmm.
those are some of the ways that I know, and I've said this. So one last thing, and then I'll hand it back
No,
over
it's
to
so
you.
good. It's so good. Keep going.
My husband is a workhorse. Like he has just
Mm.
got like he's like
Same.
you know what I mean?
Mm.
So you as well, how you're like, you three it real hard.
Mm-hmm.
That man can work from morning till night and not take a breath and then just like enjoy himself when he's done working. Whereas I like have like cracked up over the years going, I'll take a nap for you. I'm going to take a break for you. What I've learned about myself and my makeup and who I
Mm-hmm.
am is I need more margin in life than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
So I also, in my schedule, if it's a busy schedule, if I know I'm going to be recording a podcast all day, I like all day, a couple
Mm-hmm.
hours,
Mm-hmm.
and to be late for.
Yeah.
But if I know I'm going to do that on both sides of that, I don't schedule in a ton of stuff because this is a pour out session. I know I
Mm-hmm.
can't go into 10 more meetings after this because I know myself and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to give my best. So you have to know yourself as well. You may be a workhorse who's really good
Mm-hmm.
at 9 to 5, back to back, get it
Mm-hmm.
done. Others of you know I need a slow start on that day because I'm going to be pouring out here and I need to be focused here for my children when they get home from school. Whatever that looks like, just know yourself. And but like I said, I can tell another sign for me is when I'm in a season where there's low margin, I have to really watch myself and make sure that I'm doing the rhythms that I know keep me healthy, which is waking up early, getting time with Jesus, going to the gym. I need to be in a workout class. I need because that's good for my mental health as much as it is
Mm-hmm.
for my physical. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of those things I have to pay attention to when I know it's going to be a crazy season.
Oh, it's just so good. This is actually going to make you laugh because I want you all to rewind what Andi just said, and I just want you to take some inventory. What do you value? Who are you? And what do you need to help keep you in your tolerant window where you can actually function, even when, like she said, it's chaotic, but can you function in the chaos where it's not managing you, but you're managing it?
Yeah.
Go back and take inventory. The funny thing that you said is, and this is how you're getting to know me, is I am actually not a workhorse. My husband is he works sometimes till 3 o'clock in the morning. He works and works and works and can still be really present with us. I, on the other hand, am exactly you. I
No
cannot,
way.
yeah, isn't that wild? Even though
Hmm.
I'm a 3, I have a very, very heavy, if not debatable that I'm a 4, wing, which means that I I have to have time alone, actually, alone.
Yes, me too.
I need to
Mhm.
have time alone. And I'm actually much more introverted than people think I am. Um, so like recently, I've started to take on a lot of clients and one-on-one clients. for, because I feel like God's asked me to do that. And also financially, our family, sometimes you just got to do some things financially. But that means that I have to be very cautious of what I'm putting on that day, because I've realized 4 clients in a day for me is too many.
Yep.
I start actually giving advice and not actually coaching well, because I'm like, you know what, let me just
Mm.
tell you what to do, because it takes more energy for me to actually get you to
Mhm.
know what you're supposed to do. And
Yeah.
really, and who knows if I'm right? It's like, that's not the goal of coaching. The goal of coaching and story work is for God to illuminate the places that you need to go into.
Yeah.
And I'm just the guide, not telling you what to do. I literally had to text a client yesterday and apologize. I was like, I think I was leading you. And I don't know if what I
Wow.
said resonated, but I think I was leading you. And I apologize for that. Let's revisit that conversation and just really
Mhm.
see what Holy Spirit might be saying. I say all of that to let you know that, like, I'm very similar to that.
Mhm.
I have learned my margins. I have learned that without margin, there is no ministry for me.
There
I
you go.
have to have margin, and
Oof.
margin might look different for you than it does for me. But I've had to, the great saying, know thyself, know where you are. And so my life is, by the average person, very busy.
Yeah.
However, in comparison to a lot of people, I used to feel guilty about how much time I take alone, how much time I take with Jesus,
Yeah.
how much time. I mean, every morning I get up early, and it has to be a couple of hours. And that's not to be like,
Mhm.
I'm so spiritual. It's because my mental capacity
Yeah.
is very, very weak. And I will operate in achievement, go hustle, and it will take my soul.
Yeah.
And I will not focus on actually what God has for me. I will just achieve
Mm.
to what I can measured success.
Yep.
And another thing is, actually, this has been a huge one for me, is asking for help. Uh, I'm not,
What? No,
I'm
I'm just
not
kidding.
great at, oh, I'm better, way better now. Carabeth can attest to this. I mean, Carabeth, her and I have had conversations where I've been crying because I'm like, this feels so stupid, but I can't get to the grocery store. It is really hard for me to get to the grocery store. And she's probably laughing listening to this now, because I'm crying and I'm like, I need to be the mom that can get to the grocery store. I've got to feed my kids. Like, I need to get to the grocery store, but there's so many things going on in the day. And even taking care of my kids keeps me away from something that takes me a solid 2.5 hours to do. Because once you go there and then shop and then
Yeah.
put all the groceries away and all the things and just think about the food and all, it's a lot. It happens because my kids got to eat all the time. So it's like,
I
I'm
know.
always at the freaking grocery store. And I got 2 football players in my house. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's so funny because, she actually looked at me and she was like, I, I could actually sit down and do a list with you, and I could just order it and have it delivered to your house. Would that help
Good
you?
old
Good
yeah.
old Carabeth, right? And I'm like, to be honest with you, I feel so much shame in that
Oh,
a mom should
yeah.
be able to do that. Like, a mom should be able to do that. And
I get
I'm
that.
bawling, and she's like, no, a mom needs to be able to say, like, I can care for my kids and also know that we need to ask for help in doing it. And I'm like, okay. And I
That's
haven't
really
had her
good.
order yet, but I did get Walmart order up where you can just put the order.
Yeah.
So at night I could put the order in and then just go pick it up. So there's a compromise there where I'm still picking up the groceries.
Oh
I
my
just say
gosh.
all of, because, I mean, I do. I just say all of this because I feel like we need to normalize how hard it is. And yet there are things we can do to be able to manage the chaos
Yeah.
where we still feel like we're present
Yeah.
and not out of that. I want to ask you this. Why do you think it's so hard for us in general, and you specifically, me
Mhm.
specifically, why do you think it's so hard for us, or maybe has been so hard for us, to say no to things, or to go, I'm going to let that go. I'm actually going to let that go and I'm not going to do it. Or today I have all these meetings. This happened to me the other day, and I'm canceling all these meetings because I know I'm not in the right place today.
Mhm.
And although I know it may let them down, and I want my words to be yes, and I want to stand by them, I
Yeah.
am not okay right now. And I need to go be alone.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is so hard for people to do that? What has it been
Yeah.
like for you or for what you've seen?
I'm sure the root of it for all of us is different, and it
Sure.
it probably is part of our story and the
Sure.
story
Yes.
work, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Right.
So, why do we get there? Um, for me, I realized over time a lot of it does have to do with my story, and it's fear of
Mhm.
man stuff. So,
Yeah.
it's fear of man. It is desiring to look like I am okay, like I can help, like I can come alongside, like I'm doing good. And part of my story is my mom and I had a very broken relationship and very
Mhm.
codependent relationship, and I was
Mhm.
more her mother than the other way around emotionally. I mean,
Sure.
she met my needs, like, you know what
Sure.
it is. Like,
Oh yeah,
but
this crew understands story for
yeah,
sure.
that's what
We're
I'm
here for
saying.
it.
So, like, that's like this little piece of the story.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, there's that side of things. The church that I grew up in was wild, like, but it was all about performance and making sure that you were being like seen to do the right thing. Um,
Mm.
so I just grew up with a longing to please, because I think
Mhm.
in my young years,
Yeah.
I emotionally was carrying and taking care of someone, and honestly have a gift of discernment and the ability to see and feel and know what's going on in a room.
Yeah. Yep.
So therefore, out of whack, that ends up being something where it's like, I'm important here. Like so therefore I need to say yes because I'm here to help. And then it becomes a savior complex. There's so many layers to it.
Mhm.
But then what you start to realize is, oh my gosh, I'm operating in fear of man rather than obedience to God and fear of God and his call for my life.
Mhm.
And it just becomes this big idol. So I think for me, um,
Mm.
I was terrified and then you pastor in New York City where everyone expects you to show up and be a certain way. And like
Mm.
you have to like battle the way of the world and
Mm.
live, for the kingdom
Right.
constantly and figure out how to do that. So I think it was just this unlearning and untethering to an old
Mm.
way for me. And then when we moved here to Charleston and came to Seacoast, like Pastor Josh and Lisa, who are also, I'm saying that as a place of honor because they're two of our closest friends too, but they're
Yeah.
our pastors as well.
Yeah.
Um, I have never been in such a safe environment
I
where
mean, same thing, girl. It's
I'm
amazing.
just like, where there is
How did I get
no,
here?
yeah, how, like, thank you, Jesus, for like,
Yes.
I didn't realize on how many levels we needed
Mhm.
this safe space. But what this house has done for us, and I'll speak for myself in the last
Mhm.
year and a half, I have unlearned so much I didn't even know I needed to. But there is literally, like, if performance starts to stand up in this church, that idol is like kicked down.
Mm.
And so, like, to the point where they're like, serve, don't serve, come to church, don't come to church, like this
Mm.
welcome. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, what?
Right.
Um, and so I think, and it's not even just that, it's so much more. It's the way that they
Mhm.
have done life with us and friendship and poured into us as pastors and friends that has created this space where I've been able to unravel and just be. And they're not looking, how do I put this? They want me, but they don't need me.
Oh my gosh, Andy. This is literally what my pastor said to me 3 years ago, and we sat in his office. I just have to pause for this.
Jump in.
You are like, I just am sitting here going, you are God's gift to me. I was sitting in the office with Dave, my pastor, and we were wrestling out some stuff because I was there and hired there to do something, and there's a lot going on, and I knew I was healing in this church, but when I start to feel threatened, I peacock up and try to prove myself. And then he like called out pride in me, and he was totally right. Reasons behind that was not, when I don't have clarity and I don't know where I stand with something,
Mm,
I get like, I got to prove myself. Um, and he sat there and he goes, Karrie, what would it look like for you to be in a church where I just look at you and say, we don't actually need you here, but we just want you here? And I literally looked at him.
what?
Yeah. Isn't that wild, Andy? And I looked at
Yes.
him and I said, I have no compartment for that. Not even in my
No
own
paradigm.
family of origin was I not just wanted for who I am. There was definitely, we have a role for you. And that
Mm,
role needs to be played for you to be fully welcomed in. That is so wild that you just said that. Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted. Carry on. In that place of you learning this idea around just being wanted
yeah.
and not really needed, how did that change things?
Well, I think there have been times where even because I'm not able to, I've been invited in to the table for certain things, even in our new church community and family. And I've had to say no because I'm not available
Right.
or I'm not able to because it's like even with Pastor Lisa, with Lisa, it's so funny because she's both and like the retreat at Church Creek, like we've led retreats together for other women and pastors and leaders. And she needed some help in picking up different retreats. Well, I had said yes to a certain amount of them, but then when I went back and looked at my calendar, there was just one of them in there that was just like, if I did that, I wouldn't see my family. I knew what
Right.
was going to happen. I knew I would unravel. And I was a little bit nervous to ask.
Hmm.
And I did like present, I sent an email to her and her amazing assistant, Keenan, who's also a good friend. And I just said to both of them, hey, like, my yes is my yes, but when
Hmm.
I'm looking at my life, I wanna be upfront to say, "This particular one, I don't know if I'll be able to do this because of A, B, and C, but if
Hmm.
you guys don't have somebody, I know I already said yes, so I'll jump in and do it and figure it out." Well, the response was immediate. It was like, "Oh, no problem. Like, let it,"
Mm.
and I'm like, "I do not know what to do with this."
Yeah. Like, do you
They're
still love me? Can I still belong? If I can't
that.
let you consume me and be everything you need me to be, can I still belong?
And for the first time, instead of it just being like rhetoric, where you say things like, if you're not invited at the table for who you are, just say no. Don't be,
Right.
and I know there's those memes out there that say all of
Hmm.
that. But I think for the first time, I'm like, I'm at a table where I'm just loved if I can come and sit at it, or if I need to lay on the couch and cry and not
My
sit at the
gosh.
table. Like they don't care. They
Right.
just love me. So that has conditioned something in me where go to the table, don't go to the table, preach at a big conference, don't preach ever again. Like,
Right.
I'm good.
I'm
Like,
good.
this house has shown me how to just be at home in my skin.
Oh,
And it's just been a long, like, I don't know if I've ever been here like this. So,
same.
I would guess that's what helps me with my yes and no. So if you're struggling to be at home in your skin, or you feel like you got to please somebody, or you have to achieve, which we all have these
Of course.
things. And I'm
Of
not
course.
saying I do it perfectly either,
Hmm.
but I would say this has been my journey over the last year and a half in this most beautiful undoing where I have fallen more deeply in love with the body of Christ, not
Yes.
away from it, where I'm watching so many people walk away. I'm going further in. And
Yeah.
it's healed me. There's been so much healing. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. It's just the parallels to our life. I know you guys are kind of listening, going like, okay, are you guys falling
Can
in
you
love with
guys
each
stop
other? What's
saying it?
happening?
But it's true.
Like,
It's
get
weird.
it. But I think when this will speak to something for you in the sense that I want to explain and break down a couple of things that Andi said, because I want you to understand how this is relatable to you. When we are young, we don't have an adult brain. We've talked about this a little bit in previous podcasts, but we don't have an adult brain to understand what's really going on. So what we will do is we will lean onto our gifts and adapt to the surroundings that we're in to play a role that will keep us safe and in belonging. So
Yeah.
those adaptive behaviors, for me, it was, I will be the rescuer. I will be the holder of my dad's emotions. It will be me and
Yeah.
my dad against the world. And I will be the strong one. I will be the one
Yeah.
that rescues and holds, and no one will get to my dad because I will be in front of him. I'm 5 with
Yeah.
this narrative. That's called an adaptive behavior. Andi had an adaptive behavior where I will help and offer and allow so much of me to be consumed so that they can feel a sense of well-being. They can
Yeah.
feel secure in who they are. That's adaptive. When
Yeah.
we get older, those adaptive behaviors don't just all of a sudden disappear and we just function healthily. We actually move those adaptive behaviors into maladaptive behaviors. And those maladaptive behaviors shows itself in what we do in everyday life, and we play those things out. Andi
Mm.
needing to be the codependent, I've got you. I'm going to take care of everyone's emotional needs. I'm going to pour myself out until I have nothing. And yet, what it will create, because there's not substance in give and take, it will create a lot of betrayal.
Yeah.
and also feel like I'm the stranger. I'm the one that always gets kicked out. And so where is my home and where is my belonging? So this will be the constant battle for her
Mhm.
in that sense of I will pour myself out and yet people will take and therefore it will feel like and sometimes will be betrayal.
Yeah.
For me, it will not feel like betrayal because I won't give you my heart at all. I will be very like, you are very distant. I will rescue you and I will be the savior, but you will never know me. And I will speak
Oof.
truth, but you will never, ever, ever get my heart.
Mhm.
Therefore, because there is this maladaptive behavior of me being the savior and telling the truth, people don't like the truth. So I get kicked out. I get kicked out metaphorically or even
Wow.
really in rooms. So I always feel like I'm the stranger. I don't have a kingdom. I don't have a place to go. Where are my people? And I think we can relate in some terms in that as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there is an essence of betrayal in that, but often just feel like I have ostracized myself because I won't actually let you love me.
Wow.
Um, when I say all of this, it comes back to this idea around managing chaos in
Mhm.
the sense of just like Andi said, you've got to look at your own personhood. It's going to be different for
Yeah.
everyone because we all have a different, because this is storied for us. When I can't say no to something, and I look at my life and I go, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. And I know I'm out of my window of tolerance. The chaos
Mhm.
is managing me and I can't say no. I know I am operating in my maladaptive behavior, which is I need to rescue it. I
Mhm.
need to be the savior. And that's how I know this is not going to bring peace.
Yeah.
This isn't going to bring me back to my window of tolerance. It's going to keep me out of it. And that's why story work is so important, but it's also to understand. And then on the flip side, why can't I say yes to anything? I'm not going to go to church because church has hurt me. I'm not going to get involved in small group because women have hurt me.
Oh,
I'm not going to
oh,
do this. So we move to hypo arousal. Well, you know what? It's just me and Jesus and I don't need anybody and I'm not going to say yes. And that is
wow.
a maladaptive behavior that is keeping you from the hurt of not belonging. And in a sense, going, see, I don't need anybody to belong. I just need me and Jesus. And that's a lie. It's not true.
Ooh. Oh, you just unraveled so many arguments right there. And I'm like, just drop your mic. I'm the one that's holding mine. Free flow.
Free flow. I'm free flowing over here. But
But I was like,
doesn't that feel
whoa.
so true in the sense of
Yes.
going, these maladaptive behaviors play out. So bottom line, with this idea of chaos, we've kind of covered a lot of places.
Yeah.
In managing the chaos, to reiterate, Andi, just reiterate a couple of those like points, the value that get them there. I'll
Mhm.
reiterate a couple of points, and then we
Great.
will cleanse you guys off with some love.
Yeah. So to reiterate, I would say take some time and write down your values for your own life, for your
So
marriage, for
good.
your family. What do you value? Because if you don't choose, the chaos will choose for you.
Come on.
Uh, the have a regular calendar meeting with whoever's in your world. So you may be single, this may not be relatable, but have a calendar meeting with yourself and Jesus if you need to, and go, God, is there anything that I'm doing that you don't want me to be doing? But
So good.
also, if you are in a family situation, you know your values together with your husband or wife. If make sure that you're sitting together and that you're on the same page and that you're not neglecting the things that matter most.
Mm.
So, like, even for us, like a value is we go to church on a regular basis. We have always done that. So Sundays is imperative. That even our kids, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize how deep that value was until they all got jobs and told their bosses. They said, "Yeah, I told my boss we can't do Sunday," and I was like, well, there you go. Like, you know what good job, guys.
Right.
But, it's like all of those sorts of things. Like, what are your values? Because check your calendars. Know what your margin levels are. I need a lot of margin. My husband doesn't need as much. How
Mm-hmm.
much margin do you need to function? How much alone time do you need to refuel? How much time, you know what I mean? So like
Yes.
be aware of all of those factors. And the reason why I'm going to ping back for a second, your calendar is so important is like, listen, we saw this storm coming. I knew my son was going to be leaving at the same time my kids were going to be starting school. There were a few things that got thrown in there that were new, but we knew this huge transition was coming. So we put margin around it so
Mm.
that our hearts could actually process the pain of letting go. And so it's stuff like that. Even
Mm.
my assistant, Tanya, she put nothing in the week after Zeke.
So
left.
smart.
She's like, I'm not going to schedule anything for you. I don't know how you're going to be. You might be
Right.
great. You might be horrible. So it was just like this breath to be able to, funnily enough, you talked about grocery shopping. Grocery shopping is that one thing I know I have margin in my life. If I get to go to Trader Joe's for fun and walk the aisles and buy stuff. Otherwise, I'm ordering online. I'm
Yeah.
ordering Costco
Right.
online. I'm
Right.
using Instacart. I'm getting my groceries sent to my house because again, I'm the same as you. I had to let that go. I
Hmm.
should be able to do this.
Right.
But like when there's margin, when there's space. So those, to reiterate, those are the few things that I would give you.
I think it's so important. I mean, again, the chaos is going to happen.
Mhm.
And how will you manage it per your own lens, your own personality, and your own life? And I'll just say for me, the reiteration for me is listen, ask yourself this question. Here, Andy's giving you some really good steps. The larger step of what I'm going to have you take a look at or encourage you to take a look at is really looking at your story and asking yourself, what was the role that I had that was required of me, whether directly
Yeah.
or indirectly, that I had to play in my home to feel safe and feel belonging? And
Yeah.
am I playing that role out today? And is it keeping me from my true self? Is it keeping me from being loved on and connected with? Because it's in that place that we will operate
Mhm.
to, and that will mean that chaos is managing us, and we're doing, like, because that's what happened in our homes. There was chaos in all of our homes. No one got off
Yeah.
and not having chaos in their home, and you had to
Exactly.
play certain roles to help mitigate that chaos and stay in
Mhm.
belonging. Are you doing that today? And is there ways for you to be able to acknowledge those and go, oh, God, I actually want to step more authentically and truly and tell a truer story of who I was created to be? And although actually I'm very thankful for that rescue nature that I had to learn through the heartache.
Mhm.
Uh, Andi has incredible discernment because of what she had to witness and hold. But we want to make sure that those decisions and the things that we do are really from an internal healing, so externally we can say yes
Yeah.
to that which is important and no to that which is important, and
Yeah.
disappoint the right people, and be
Yeah.
able to operate in that sense. And so chaos, let me free you, chaos will happen. It is a
Yeah.
part of life. What keeps us in our window of tolerance is not easy life. It's the ability to look at the chaos and understand that you actually have tools to be able to manage it, hold it,
Mhm.
weep through it, invite
Yeah.
others into it, and that you don't have to hold the chaos alone. When you are holding it alone, you will operate out of your window of tolerance. You
Yeah.
were not meant to do that alone. It
Mhm.
has been such a great series, marriage, ministry, mayhem, and we have covered so much ground. Andi, I mean, just even in these past couple of weeks of getting, of episodes, getting to know you, I'm like, man, it feels so good to sit with someone where you're like, you feel seen. You feel like, man,
Yeah.
first of all, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one. And I just hope that for so many of you, it's been years, Andi and I are newer friends, newer. We've known each other for a little
Yeah.
while now, but keep praying into those,
Yeah.
like that God would bring those people into your life where you can start feeling really seen. Because this has been super life giving for me.
Me too. We're not alone. We're so not alone. And God will give you sisters and brothers and friends where you're like, you resonate without even having to say too many words. And
Right.
I think that's been, I'm almost 45, very, very soon. And just feeling like, wow, I never would have thought it would have been in my 40s that some of these sweetest gifts of the things that I've cried out for years
Come on.
have finally come. And the waiting is hard in
Mhm.
some of those things, but I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
So, so grateful.
So
Yeah.
good. Well, thank you for being co-hosting this series with me. I couldn't have thought of anybody better to do it. And I hope that you guys just really take these episodes to heart. You guys, if you are interested in knowing more about what Andi does, I want you guys to go and follow her. She has a really good book that it's my favorite out of all your books, is Friendship is Complicated.
Oh,
And it's an honest look at, it's really honest. And we're at the Honest Pod. It's a really honest us look at friendships, also why they were hard to navigate because of her story and how she had to work through some relationship stuff with her mom to be able to start stepping into friendships more authentically. It's a very, very good book. Andi, thank you for blessing the world with your honesty and your kind heart and who you are and your laughter, because I just don't want to do this life without laughing. So thank you for being that.
Oh,
Love you
I
so
love
much.
you.
Yes, to all of you guys listening, may God bless you and keep you and let his face shine upon you in your marriage, in your ministry, and in your mayhem. We'll see you
Oh,
next week.
yeah.